The sky above the Atlantic shimmered with unnatural light, like a ripple across the fabric of reality itself. Jonathan Reed, a decorated aerospace engineer turned reluctant military strategist, stood on the observation deck of the USS Liberty, peering at the horizon with a cold, calculating stare. The waves below were calm, a mocking contrast to the chaos that was about to descend. Across the globe, every major city braced for an event that no one had dared to predict. The Imperial Armada was coming. It started 3 days ago, with flickers of ships appearing in orbit. Initially, humanity thought it was a drill and advanced holographic display, a test of military radar. But the sheer scale quickly shattered that illusion. The fleet wasn't small, it was a dark, pulsating monolith of interstellar warships, each larger than Manhattan and armed with weapons that had no earthly equivalent. Governments scrambled their defenses, but even the most sophisticated AI-assisted systems were overwhelmed. Jonathan had seen the simulations. There was no conceivable way humanity could survive. Beside him, Commander Rachel Monroe of the United States Space Force adjusted her headset, voice steady but tense. All satellites report anomaly spikes. Their cloaking systems are fluctuating. We might get a clear visual for 3 seconds, then they're gone again. She glanced at Jonathan, a flicker of hope in her eyes he didn't feel. You designed countermeasures for the Orion Shield, right? Anything we could deploy now? Jonathan ran a hand through his graying hair. Nothing we've tested. Theoretical models suggest it could work, but he stopped. Words failed him. The models were never meant for real combat. Humanity had never faced something like this. The Armada's first strike was merciless. From orbit, beams of concentrated energy ripped through the outer layers of the United States orbital defense stations. Cities below felt the tremors, not explosions, but the subtle vibration of the planet reacting to unimaginable forces. Civilian populations panicked. Governments sent encrypted messages to the UN, but most communications satellites had already been disabled. At Mission Control in Houston, Captain Daniel Hayes barked orders to the crew. Target their lead ship. Get every missile system ready. Lock onto their signal. Whatever you do, don't let them vanish. The control room hummed with tension, screens flickering with radar blips that moved faster than human comprehension. Jonathan clenched his fists. Hayes, you know as well as I do, it won't hit. They're shields, they're adapting to every form of energy we throw at them. It's like hitting a ghost with a hammer. But then, across the globe, the first unexpected report came. From a remote observation station in Iceland, a scientist's voice cracked over the comms. Sir, I don't understand. One of the Armada ships, its energy signature just collapsed. Like it never existed. Silence fell. Rachel whispered, almost to herself, could it be? Jonathan felt a spark of something long dormant, the human instinct for survival. It was reckless. It was impossible. But maybe, just maybe, the Armada had underestimated humanity. The fleet descended further, now visible even to the naked eye. Massive hulls blocked out stars. Their design was alien in every sense, spiky protrusions, jagged edges, and a surface that seemed to absorb light. Humanity had always imagined invaders, but seeing them in the sky over New York and Los Angeles was different. Fear twisted into awe, awe into sheer terror. Jonathan, Rachel, and a small team of specialists were deployed to the front lines in Washington, D.C., where the presidential command bunker had been converted into the Central Human Command. Among them was Lieutenant Marcus Avery, a young communications prodigy who had never seen battle yet carried the unshakable confidence of someone born to lead. We need to think beyond weapons, Marcus said, pacing the floor. They're not just stronger, they're smarter. Faster. They anticipate our every move. If we hit them head-on, we're done in minutes. Rachel nodded. Then we fight differently. We use what they don't expect. The first skirmish occurred over the Pacific Ocean. Humanity's fleets, a mix of converted aircraft carriers, experimental plasma ships, and hastily deployed satellites armed with orbital weapons, engaged the Armada. Energy beams collided with human shields, creating flashes visible even from the moon. But each attempt was met with frustrating precision. Every salvo was neutralized, every strike countered. Humanity's losses were staggering. And yet, in the chaos, Jonathan noticed a pattern. The alien ships moved in rigid formations, responding not to human tactics but to predicted logic, like chess pieces anticipating moves several turns ahead. It was then that a radical idea struck him. If the Armada calculated based on logic, then unpredictability could be the key. Chaos could be a weapon. He pitched the plan to Rachel in whispered urgency. "We'll use deception. We'll simulate attacks in one quadrant, pull them in, then," his voice faltered. "Then we hit where they don't expect it." Rachel studied him. "You're suggesting a full-scale misdirection against the most advanced fleet in known space?" Jonathan nodded. "It's our only shot." Hours passed as humanity scrambled to implement the strategy. Missile systems were reprogrammed, ships repositioned, satellites hacked to emit false signals. On the USS Liberty, Jonathan coordinated with engineers worldwide, each movement precise, tense, almost ritualistic. The Armada, as if sensing the change, accelerated. Beams of energy carved paths through the ocean, vaporizing ships in their wake. But then, like a storm breaking, something remarkable happened. Signals from different parts of the world synchronized. Human fleets moved in sudden, erratic patterns. Decoys fired. Satellites blinked false coordinates. For a moment, the Armada hesitated. And in that pause, Jonathan held his breath. Because in that pause, the first human counterstrike hit not with force, but with brilliance. It was small. It was precise. And it changed everything. The silence was deafening. Across the globe, human command centers and warships alike held their breath as the first counterstrike unfolded. It was almost imperceptible to the naked eye, a single human orbital drone detonating in precise coordination with multiple decoys, generating a cascade of energy pulses that seemed to ripple through the Armada's formation. The alien ships shuddered, momentarily. That hesitation was all humanity needed. Jonathan Reed watched the live feeds from the USS Liberty, eyes narrowing as the Armada's lead ship flickered like a dying star. "It's working," he muttered under his breath. "We're making them adapt, and they're too slow." Rachel Monroe's voice was tight but exhilarated. "All units, maintain unpredictability. Focus on misdirection. Let them think they're in control, they aren't." In orbit above Los Angeles, Lieutenant Marcus Avery piloted a tactical drone squadron, weaving through the Armada's ranks like threads through a loom. His fingers danced across the controls, each input precise, each movement counterintuitive. "They're reacting to every move," he reported. "But we're changing faster than they can calculate. Their shields, see that?" On a monitor, the shield pattern of one massive alien ship pulsed erratically, overloading in localized areas. "Yes," Jonathan said, leaning forward. "We're cracking them." The human fleet surged forward. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, ships fired in carefully orchestrated chaos, missiles exploding mid-air, energy pulses redirected, satellites firing decoy signals. Humanity was not strong enough to outgun the Armada, but it was clever enough to outthink them. And then came the unexpected: the aliens adapted, but poorly. Their attempts to recalibrate their shields against erratic attacks caused internal malfunctions. Several ships blinked out entirely, their hulks drifting silently through orbit. On the USS Liberty, engineers celebrated quietly, knowing each disappearance represented not just survival, but a chance. Rachel's hand shook as she activated the global comm system. "Command to all units, the moment we've trained for is now. Focus on high-value targets, their lead vessels. Make every move unpredictable. Every strike must be a surprise." On the ground in New York, Captain Daniel Hayes coordinated air support and orbital relays. "We're seeing openings," he shouted, voice carrying over static and alarms. "Reinforce the flanks, don't let them recover." Jonathan felt a thrill he hadn't experienced since the early days of flight tests, when he'd pushed prototypes to the brink of failure. This was human ingenuity against incomprehensible power, and for the first time, they had the advantage. Then came the human counteroffensive, precise, brutal, and lightning fast.
Orbital bombardments struck alien weapons platforms, rendering them useless.
Decoy satellites emitted false energy signatures that caused the Armada's sensors to misfire. Human pilots, exploiting the aliens' predictable response patterns, executed maneuvers that defied physics, or so it seemed. The Armada, for all its size and power, began to falter. Marcus Avery, sensing the critical moment, took a gamble. "I'm initiating the orbital null sequence," he announced, hands flying over his console. "It's dangerous, but it could break their formation completely."
Rachel's brow furrowed. "You're sure the sequence won't fry our own systems?"
Marcus hesitated. "It's a risk. But their shields are already unstable. If it works, it's over." Jonathan leaned closer to the monitor.
"Do it. Now. Humanity doesn't get second chances."
A pulse of energy surged from strategically placed orbital nodes, sending a cascading EMP-like wave through the Armada's fleet.
Lights blinked. Shields fluctuated. Communications between alien vessels cut out in bursts. Several ships spun uncontrollably, drifting as if tossed by cosmic currents. The effect was immediate. Human forces moved like a predator closing in on disoriented prey. Missile salvos hit targets that no one had even aimed at before. Energy beams struck vessels at angles the aliens hadn't anticipated. One by one, the Armada's ships began to collapse under the combined weight of human ingenuity, strategy, and sheer audacity.
In Washington, D.C., Rachel's voice broke through the tension.
"Jonathan, it's working. They're breaking." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Not yet. We need full compliance.
Every unit, every ship, every system, focus.
Don't give them a chance to recover."
As human forces pressed the attack, the largest ship in the Armada, the command vessel, began to glow unnaturally, its surface pulsing with energy like a living heart. Its shields wavered, then failed entirely. Humanity's combined efforts funneled into a single, decisive strike. The Liberty's experimental plasma cannon, synchronized with orbital drones and decoy arrays, targeted the lead ship's core.
The explosion was not cinematic, it was cataclysmic.
Energy ripped across space in jagged tendrils, consuming the lead vessel in seconds.
The pulse radiated outward, cascading through the remaining Armada ships.
Without coordination, without the command ship, the rest of the alien fleet faltered. Some blinked out entirely, vanishing from sensors.
Others drifted aimlessly before succumbing to cascading system failures.
In the USS Liberty's command center, Jonathan, Rachel, and Marcus stared in disbelief as the final ships disappeared. Silence filled the room, not the tense silence of fear, but the stunned quiet of victory.
Rachel exhaled slowly. We did it."
Marcus shook his head, eyes wide.
"I can't believe it, they underestimated us. They thought logic would be enough.
They never counted on chaos." Jonathan allowed himself a rare smile.
"Humans adapt. That's what they forgot.
We're not the strongest, not the fastest, but we're unpredictable. And in that unpredictability lies our power." On the streets below, civilians emerged cautiously, looking up at the sky.
The Armada was gone.
Cities bore scars, yes, and lives had been lost, but humanity had endured. Against impossible odds, they had turned a war that seemed destined to annihilation into a story of survival and brilliance.
Yet even in the midst of celebration, a sense of caution lingered.
Jonathan knew the Armada might have been just a vanguard, a scout of something larger, something waiting beyond the stars. Humanity had won this battle, but the war for the galaxy's future was only beginning.
For now, though, Earth breathed again.
The impossible had been accomplished in seconds that felt like hours.
Humanity had turned the tide of war not with raw strength, but with ingenuity, courage, and unyielding determination.
Jonathan looked at Rachel and Marcus.
"Let's make sure the next time they come, they'll regret underestimating us."
And somewhere, in the void of space where the Armada had vanished, sensors flickered with the faintest trace of energy, reminders that the galaxy had taken notice of Earth's defiance.
The silence after the Armada's collapse was surreal.
From orbit to Earth's surface, the world seemed frozen in disbelief.
Jonathan Reed stood on the USS Liberty's observation deck, the glow of distant cities reflecting off the ocean waves below. The battle was over, or so it seemed, but the enormity of what had happened had yet to sink in. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged victorious in seconds that felt like eternity.
Commander Rachel Monroe joined him, her voice quieter than usual.
We shattered them. Against every odds, we actually did it.
She looked out at the night sky, now peaceful, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath.
But Jonathan, we've just sent a message to the galaxy. They know we're here.
They know not to underestimate us.
Jonathan didn't answer immediately.
His mind raced, replaying the moments of the battle, the calculated chaos, the cascading failures of the Armada, the improbable genius of Marcus Avery's orbital null sequence.
Humanity had turned the tide with ingenuity alone.
With sheer unpredictability.
And yet, he knew this was only the beginning.
Below, in Washington, D.C., survivors poured into streets, cautiously celebrating. Emergency services moved quickly to tend the wounded and stabilize critical infrastructure, while news feeds around the world broadcast the same impossible truth: the Imperial Armada had been defeated. Entire populations, previously frozen with terror, erupted into jubilation. Fireworks, once banned due to environmental regulations, now lit up the skies in cities like New York, Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, everywhere humans could reach.
Captain Daniel Hayes, coordinating ground and aerial units, allowed himself a tired smile. We actually did it, he murmured. And against the impossible, no less.
Marcus Avery, still at his console on the Liberty, leaned back and rubbed his eyes.
I can't believe it. All that planning, all the risk, and it worked. For once, we outsmarted something that could have ended us all.
Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder.
You didn't just outsmart them, Marcus. You reminded the galaxy what it means to be human.
Resourceful.
Unpredictable. Unyielding. As the days passed, humanity began to assess the damage and the implications of what had occurred.
Entire fleets had been destroyed, orbital installations reduced to debris, cities scarred, but the lesson was clear: Earth had become a power no one could ignore.
Governments convened, scientists analyzed alien technology, and engineers began reverse engineering the Armada's wreckage.
The impossible was now possible.
Jonathan oversaw one such effort in the orbital lab stationed above the Pacific.
Alien technology, though sophisticated, had been built for predictability.
Humans had found a way to exploit that. Every day brought new discoveries, each more astounding than the last.
Energy fields that could reinforce cities, propulsion systems that could rival the fastest human spacecraft, shields capable of defending entire continents.
Earth was no longer defenseless, it had awakened.
Rachel joined him again, a quiet intensity in her eyes.
Jonathan, think about it. We've changed everything. Not just for us, for every species out there. The Armada thought they could dominate. They underestimated our creativity, our chaos, our will to survive. And now, we lead. Whether they like it or not.
Jonathan nodded, a rare calm settling over him.
They won't forget us. And neither will we. But this isn't just about power. It's about proving we're capable. Capable of defending ourselves, of surviving, of pushing the boundaries.
Outside, the sun rose over a recovering planet. Cities began reconstruction almost immediately, but this time with a new confidence. Humanity had glimpsed its potential not just as survivors, but as innovators, as strategists, as masters of unpredictability. On a distant hill overlooking the rebuilding city of New York, Marcus Avery watched children play among the ruins, laughter piercing the tension that had gripped the world for so long.
We've done more than win a battle, he said softly. We've inspired the future. Every human alive now knows what we're capable of.
Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression firm but proud. And if the Armada, or anyone else, thinks they can come back, they'll see just how dangerous we can be. Jonathan, standing beside them, allowed a small smile.
We've survived the impossible. And now, the galaxy will never look at Earth the same way again. In orbit, the remains of the Armada drifted silently, a warning etched across the void.
Humanity had proven that even against the most advanced invaders, the unpredictable mind, the relentless courage, and the daring ingenuity of humans could turn annihilation into triumph.
Months later, the first interstellar communications were established.
Alien civilizations, previously indifferent or hostile, now treated humanity with caution and curiosity.
Earth had survived. Earth had triumphed.
And humanity, once thought weak in the cosmic hierarchy, had become a force to be reckoned with. Jonathan, Rachel, and Marcus stood together on the deck of the Liberty, watching the stars. The universe was vast, dangerous, and unknown, but humanity had claimed its place among the stars. They had faced extinction and had emerged stronger, smarter, and united. Rachel broke the silence, her voice steady and unwavering. This is just the beginning. We've survived the impossible. Now, we decide what comes next.
Jonathan nodded, feeling the weight and promise of the future. Whatever comes, we'll meet it head-on. Together. And for the first time in human history, the galaxy truly understood the indomitable will of Earth's children. The Armada had invaded.
Humanity had turned the war in seconds, and in doing so, had forever reshaped the fate of every star, every planet, and every civilization that looked to the cosmos. The stars shone a little brighter that night, as if celebrating a species that had dared to defy the impossible and won.